Yeah, brilliant. That's really interesting because yes, as you say, like I suppose now it's definitely seen as more of a science and kind of yeah, wanting to go down that particular one path, I suppose.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
mm,
I can give much longer answers or shorter answers, by the way, depending on what you want me to do. So
yeah,
I'm not sure. I think I mean, to my mind, it's a shame and a problem that psychology took such a scientific route. But I do think they've been pushed by government and by generations of kind of funding mechanisms into becoming more scientific. I
mm,
really loved that when I began studying psychology, there was psychoanalysis, there was literary research, there was, you know, it was a whole range of approaches to psychology. Which,
yeah. So do you feel like that's narrowed now? How do you?
yes, I do. And I think to the detriment of the field, both because a lot of thinking about the human subject and especially all social aspects of many social aspects of psychology have been kind of pushed out into other fields. So, you know, there was a very significant period during my PhD in the 1980s when lots of social psychologists left psychology altogether and went into media studies or cultural studies or women's studies or sociology. And it was a kind of evacuation of a huge richness and diversity, and especially qualitative and more critical work was, you know, felt itself to be actively excluded. And I think psychology is the poorer subject for it, even though, you know, those social psychologists who left the field have had, you know, very rich and interesting careers in other disciplines, of which I
Mm.
count myself as one.
Yeah, that's quite a shame, as you say, in terms of the kind of outpouring. Um, how have you maybe dealt with that kind of change then throughout maybe your career? Um, in terms
It
of
was, yeah. I mean, it was painful at the time. In the I think when there was a kind of struggle both within among the social psychologists, you know, particularly the social psychology section of the BPS, but also you know, a wider redefining of the nature of psychology as a field for both because of the pressures that yeah, mainly kind of government and funding pressures, but I think also the kind of an internal argument that psychology should be a proper science. So I think it was painful at the time, and there were many years when I didn't call myself a psychologist and didn't have anything to do with the BPS, and it's only really in the last 10 years or more that I have kind of re-embraced being a psychologist and found a kind of way of, you know, kind of healing that breach for myself, but I think also in a way with colleagues.
mm, yeah, that's really interesting, kind of almost change of identity, I suppose, and
Mm.
over the years.
Mm. It's hard to embrace uh, it's hard to embrace a group if you feel you're not welcome in it.
Absolutely.
So you know, if I it's not that I've only done qualitative work. I've always done quantitative as well as qualitative, though not really experimental research. But I've always felt very strongly that psychology should be that broad field. And when I hear generations of A-level students going to study psychology and being disappointed and finding it much more narrow than they wished, and without the study of the whole person and social life and, you know, psychology in the community, psychology in the world. You know, I've just heard that from so many young people that it's, you know, to my mind, for a long time, I just felt a kind of despair that psychology was turning its back on so many things happening in the world. I realize that you know, there are others that would contest that view, but I think there were many who've seen it that way. And so I think my kind of coming to terms in the last 10 or 15 years has been a determination to say, well, actually we can define this field. It's not only for those policing the boundaries of what counts as psychology, who get to actually have the final say.